If Machiavelli had 90 days to rise today, if his income had to move fast or die where it stood, he would not start by learning more, planning more, or waiting until he felt ready. He would start by cutting. That's the hook most people miss. We've been trained to believe growth comes from addition, more skills, more hustle, more discipline, more effort. But Machiavelli understood something that still governs the world quietly. Power accelerates when excess is removed. And income, whether people like it or not, obeys the laws of power. Picture Machiavelli walking through Renaissance Florence. He didn't see morality. He didn't see intentions. He saw positions, leverage, weaknesses, and speed. He studied courts the way a general studies terrain. Cold, unsentimental, precise. If he looked at your life today, your calendar, your habits, your projects, your inbox, your obligations, he would ask one question and one question only. Which actions create power fastest and which ones must be eliminated immediately? Most people never ask this. They drown in excess. Too many goals, too many distractions, too many fears dressed up as responsibilities. They chase productivity instead of power. They mistake motion for momentum, and then they wonder why nothing changes. Machiavelli warned princes that hesitation is deadlier than weakness. The same applies to income. Effort without priority is not virtue. It is refined self-sabotage. In a world ruled by speed, leverage, and visibility, the undisciplined are consumed first. That's not cruelty. That's structure. History proves it again and again. Look at someone like Cornelius Vanderbilt. Before he became an industrial titan, he didn't outwork everyone in shipping. He cut ruthlessly. He exited unprofitable routes, crushed inefficiencies, and focused on the lanes that moved money fastest. Others stayed busy. Vanderbilt became dominant. He rose not by doing more, but by doing less with terrifying focus. This is the Machiavellian premise most people resist. You rise by subtraction, not addition. Money does not respond to how much you care, how sincere you are, or how noble your intentions feel when you collapse into bed exhausted. Money responds to the sharpness of your priorities and the speed of your execution. 90 days is not a long time, but it is enough time to rewrite a financial trajectory if you behave like someone who knows they are at war. The real question is not whether income can rise in 90 days. It can. The real question is whether you are willing to become ruthless enough to stop doing what keeps you small. Machiavelli wrote that it is not virtue that secures power but the ability to choose without hesitation. Wealth follows the same rule. It does not flow to the kindest, the busiest, or the most morally upright. It flows to those who prioritize with brutality. The difference between those who stagnate and those who rise is not intelligence, talent, or ethics. It is the violence of their focus. Successful people eliminate noise with surgical precision. They understand that every extra task, every extra obligation, every extra distraction dilutes force. They cut early, they cut fast, they cut without apology. Unsuccessful people cling. They keep all doors open, all options alive, all people satisfied, and they suffocate under the weight of their own indecision. In modern terms, your income is not determined by how much you do. It is determined by how quickly you remove what does not matter. Only a small portion of your actions generate returns. The rest quietly sabotage you. This is why Machiavelli's strategy for the next 90 days would be mercilessly simple. Kill your distractions instead of managing them. Your financial life will not change because you become nicer, more balanced, or more productive. It will change when you become ruthless enough to focus on what creates power and discard everything else. Because money has never responded to virtue, it has always responded to priority. If Machiavelli entered your life today, he would not teach you a new skill first. He would cut. He would walk through your schedule, your habits, your projects, your relationships, and your digital clutter with the eyes of a strategist, not a sentimental human. And he would eliminate everything that does not generate income, leverage, or influence. To him, removal is not loss. Removal is purification. It is the clearing of the battlefield so force can finally concentrate. Most people fail not because they lack potential, but because their potential is scattered across too many useless commitments. Look at modern examples. Higher-forming founders who suddenly break through almost always tell the same story in private. They stopped saying yes. They fired clients who drained energy. They abandoned projects that stroked identity but starved results. They withdrew from social obligations that diluted ambition. Their income didn't rise because they became better people. It rose because friction disappeared. Power accumulates when friction is removed. Money moves faster through a life with fewer obstacles. When effort stops leaking into dead ends, the remaining actions hit harder. What once took months takes weeks. What once felt impossible becomes straightforward. This is the cold truth most people avoid. Your rise will not be determined by what you add, but by what you erase. The 80% cut is the first and most brutal test of the next 90 days. Everything that does not create income, influence, or leverage must go. The moment you stop defending the unnecessary, your life begins to accelerate. The moment you let go of what weakens you, your power finally has room to grow. Before we move on, pause for a second. Think about what you already know needs to be cut: the habit, the obligation, the project, the person. If this resonates, drop a comment with one word that captures what you're letting go of. Just one word. And if you're serious about playing this game at a higher level, subscribe and join a growing community of men who are done confusing effort with power and ready to build income with clarity, leverage, and ruthless focus. Because once the noise is gone, the more dangerous question remains. And that question is where the real rise begins. Once the noise is gone, once the excess has been cut down to the bone, Machiavelli would tell you there is nowhere left to hide. Silence exposes reality. And in that silence, only one question matters. Which single skill will make you dangerous? Not talented, not interesting, not well-rounded, dangerous. Because income does not respond to variety, it responds to concentration. This is where most people fail the second test. They cut distractions, feel lighter, and then immediately dilute themselves again by chasing 10 directions at once. Machiavelli would see this as weakness disguised as curiosity. History is unforgiving on this point. Every rapid rise, whether in courts, markets, or modern business, follows the same pattern. One sharpened capability applied with relentless focus becomes a lever that lifts everything else. Look at someone like Bernard Arnault. He did not become one of the richest men alive by dabbling across industries. He focused obsessively on one thing: control of brand perception and luxury positioning. Others learned fashion. Others learned manufacturing. Arnault mastered symbolic value, acquisitions, and narrative control. One blade sharpened over decades cut through the global market. The world paid not for his effort, but for his concentration. This is the 20% skill, the competence that produces 80% of your income. The market does not pay you for everything you can do. It pays you for the one thing you can do better, faster, or clearer than most people. Most men scatter themselves across 10 mediocre abilities, hoping the combination will somehow matter. It never does. Mediocrity multiplied remains mediocrity. Machiavelli warned that a prince who spreads his forces thin invites law governs income. A single sharpened skill, however, becomes a blade capable of cutting through indifference, competition, and noise. If Machiavelli were alive today, he would narrow the modern battlefield to 3 primary arenas where money bends fastest: selling, analysis, and communication. These are not trendy skills, they are timeless levers. Selling converts value into income. Analysis reveals opportunities before others see them. Communication moves attention, trust, and belief at scale. These skills distort reality around them. They create leverage. They allow one individual to exert disproportionate influence over outcomes. This is why those who master them rise quickly, even if they start late, even if they lack credentials, even if they were invisible yesterday. Your task in the next 90 days is not to upgrade everything about yourself. That is ego masquerading as ambition. Your task is to elevate one thing until it becomes undeniable. Pick the skill with the highest earning ceiling, the greatest market demand, and the lowest density of true competence. Then weaponize it. Practice it daily, apply it under pressure, and most importantly, demonstrate it publicly. Money does not flow to potential, it flows to proof. The market rewards those who show, not those who hope to be discovered. Consider modern examples that don't make headlines. There are analysts who quietly earn more than surgeons because they see patterns earlier and explain them clearly to decision makers. There are closers who earn in months what others earn in years because they reduce uncertainty faster than anyone else in the room. There are communicators who turn ideas into income because they know how to frame reality in a way people trust. None of them are well-rounded. All of them are sharp. Machiavelli would approve. He believed that a prince armed with one decisive strength is more secure than one surrounded by many weak ones. Here is the blade line Machiavelli would carve into your mind. A man carrying 10 dull tools dies poor. A man carrying one sharpened blade commands the room. Your rise will not come from being balanced. It will come from being unmistakably sharp at one thing the market cannot overlook. This is your income core. This is your weapon. And this is where the climb truly begins. Because once you possess something sharp enough, something concentrated enough, something visible enough, the dynamics around you start to change. People treat you differently when they know what you are dangerous at. Opportunities narrow toward you instead of scattering away. Negotiations tilt. Conversations shift. You are no longer evaluated on effort or personality, but on utility. Machiavelli understood that power begins the moment others adjust their behavior around you. Income follows the same pattern. When the market adjusts to you, you have crossed an invisible threshold. But there is a problem most people still haven't faced. A sharpened blade kept hidden is useless. A dangerous skill that no one sees might as well not exist. Machiavelli warned princes that influence requires presence. Capability without visibility is strategically irrelevant. And this is where the next phase begins, because concentration alone is not enough. The blade must enter the arena. Before we move forward, pause and reflect. Which single skill, if sharpened relentlessly for the next 90 days, would actually move your income? Not the one that flatters your identity, the one the market would pay for immediately. If this question hits, leave a comment with 2 words that describe the skill you're committing to. Just 2 words. Saying it publicly locks it in. Because once you choose the blade, the next step is stepping into the light. And that changes everything. Remember this, power does not come from having a skill. Power comes from being seen having that skill. A silent talent is indistinguishable from mediocrity. A hidden strength is strategically useless. This is not modern thinking. This is ancient law. In royal courts and modern markets alike, those who rise are rarely the most capable. They are the most visible. Visibility creates familiarity. Familiarity creates trust. Trust creates leverage, and leverage creates income. Most people work in the dark, convinced that competence alone will one day be discovered. Machiavelli would laugh at this fantasy. He watched brilliant men die politically because no one saw them coming. He watched average men rise because they claimed space boldly. The marketplace has not changed. Every day you stay invisible. Someone less skilled but more visible climbs past you. They speak, they publish, they show their thinking, they display their perspective. And in doing so, they occupy psychological territory that you surrendered by staying silent. Markets do not pay the quiet, they pay the undeniable. To build public power, you do not need perfection, you need proof. Proof that you understand your craft. Proof that you can solve problems. Proof that you see what others miss. Micro insights, short analyses, case breakdowns, clear explanations, contrarian takes, lessons from the field. Each piece you put out is a signal. It says, I exist, I know, I deliver. Over time, these signals accumulate into authority, and authority becomes a weapon sharper than any resume, certificate, or degree. This is why visibility is not vanity. Visibility is leverage. When people know your name, opportunities move toward you. When they recognize your thinking, trust accelerates. When they see consistency, they assume competence. Machiavelli would frame it simply. No prince survives by hiding. Influence requires exposure. Control requires presence. Power requires being seen. The marketplace is not moved by silence. It is moved by those who claim space with clarity, frequency, and conviction. Once visibility is established, income acceleration moves to the next phase. Deals. Machiavelli would never try to win everyone. He understood a principle most people ignore. Broad approval is worthless. Targeted influence is power. To increase income in 90 days, you do not need a massive audience or endless outreach. You need a small number of people with expensive problems. 3 to 10 high-end clients can change your trajectory. 100% low-value clients will destroy it. The strategy begins with identifying high-value problems. Not the problems people complain about publicly, but the ones they fear privately. Problems that cost money, time, status, or opportunity. Executives hide them. Founders underestimate them. Professionals avoid admitting them. Machiavelli would say, a prince does not attack soldiers, he attacks weaknesses. When you understand what someone fears losing, you understand what they will pay to protect. Then comes proposition crafting. Most offers fail because they are vague, generic, and indistinguishable from noise. Machiavelli would design offers like political maneuvers. Sharp, specific, impossible to misunderstand. You reduce uncertainty, you show proof early. You demonstrate control over the situation, you outline the path from problem to outcome with ruthless simplicity. And you position yourself not as a vendor but as a strategic partner. People do not buy services, they buy reduced risk. This is where visibility compounds. Your content becomes silent negotiation leverage. Instead of begging for attention, you attract people who already see your thinking, your precision, your competence. Sales conversations stop being auditions, they become confirmations. You stop competing, you start selecting. Machiavelli would call this controlling the narrative corridor, guiding the other side to a conclusion that benefits you before the conversation even begins. High-end clients pay for clarity. They want someone who can define the problem fast, cut through noise, and show consequences without drama. Your advantage is not charm, it is certainty. Show what you deliver, show how fast you deliver it. Show what failure costs them. Show how choosing you eliminates that cost. Power in negotiation comes from reducing fear faster than anyone else. And fear collapses fastest when proof is visible. At the same time, Machiavelli would attack another illusion that keeps people trapped. The belief that income must be tied to time. A man paid for hours has no strategic freedom. He cannot maneuver, he cannot withdraw, he cannot expand. Machiavelli would call this economic captivity. The rich are not rich because they work harder. They are rich because they build mechanisms that work without them. Digital leverage is the modern escape route. Products, frameworks, systems, templates, automation. These are not side projects. They are strategic assets. An e-book crystallizes expertise. A course transfers knowledge at scale. A framework replaces repeated labor. A system frees mental bandwidth for higher-level moves. Each asset becomes a soldier working while you rest. What you build once pays repeatedly. What you refine once sharpens over time. This is the perpetual leverage loop. Knowledge becomes product. Product becomes income. Income becomes positioning. Positioning attracts higher-value clients. Higher-value clients generate new knowledge. And the cycle tightens again. Those who cling to hourly labor stay trapped in exhaustion without elevation. Machiavelli would summarize it coldly. A prince who cannot operate without his presence is not a prince. He is a prisoner. Before we move on, reflect honestly. Are you building visibility or hiding behind preparation? Are you chasing many small wins or positioning for a few decisive ones? If this section hit, leave a comment with one word that describes what you need more of right now. Clarity, proof, visibility, leverage. Just one word, because once leverage is in motion, the final test begins, and that test decides who adapts and who disappears. Machiavelli warned rulers that the greatest threat is not the enemy you see, but the terrain that shifts beneath your feet while you cling to yesterday's position. The modern marketplace obeys the same law. Algorithms change. Attention moves. Competitors adapt. Needs mutate. The man who waits for stability dies waiting. The man who adapts relentlessly becomes untouchable. This is why the next 90 days are not a straight line. They're a feedback loop. Action, response, adjustment, acceleration. Your rise depends on how quickly you interpret reality and change course without emotion. The first phase is sharpening, isolation, intensity. You refine your core skill until it becomes precise, commercially sharp, and undeniable. You publish daily, not for applause, but for information. Every post, every insight, every breakdown is a probe into the market. What resonates, what gets ignored, what triggers engagement, curiosity, resistance. Machiavelli would call this sounding the terrain, learning where influence can be applied with maximum force. Princes who moved blindly lost kingdoms. Those who observed first conquered faster. The second phase is penetration. Now you step into the arenas where opportunity actually lives. You initiate selectively, not desperately. You pursue deals with clarity, not need. Your visibility becomes proof. Your proof becomes leverage. Objections become data. Rejections become calibration. This is where most people emotionally collapse. Machiavelli would see rejection as information, not insult. A prince who resents reality loses power. A prince who studies it gains advantage. Every interaction sharpens your blade if you let it. The third phase is leverage. This is where effort stops scaling linearly and begins compounding. You codify what works. You turn repeated actions into systems. You convert insights into frameworks. You build assets that operate without your presence. This is where income detaches from hours. This is where strategy replaces strain. The man who finishes these 90 days is structurally different from the man who started them. Not more motivated, not more inspired, positioned differently. The power of this loop is not perfection, it is velocity. Most people wait too long to adjust. They protect failing ideas. They cling to plans that flatter their ego. They hesitate because hesitation feels safer than admitting error. Machiavelli was merciless on this point. Hesitation is death. Reality punishes the rigid. Markets reward the adaptable. You do not need perfect plans. You need perfect responsiveness. This leads to the truth most people resist until it breaks them. The world does not reward labor. It rewards leverage. Effort produces linear returns. Leverage produces exponential ones, and exponential curves always outperform human stamina. Machiavelli would describe labor as the tactic of the powerless. When you rely on effort alone, you trade your body, time, and energy for survival. You fight gravity. You exhaust yourself upstream. Meanwhile, those who understand leverage move with disturbing ease. Look closely at anyone who rises quickly. They leverage attention, technology, distribution, systems, other people's time. Other people's desire for clarity. 1 hour of their decision-making outweighs 50 hours of someone else's effort. Not because they are better, but because they operate from a higher structural altitude. Those who depend on effort alone are trapped in an unwinnable equation. The harder they work, the more depleted they become, while income barely moves. They confuse suffering with progress, endurance with intelligence. Machiavelli would call this a tragic flaw. The belief that virtue can defeat structure. It cannot. Structure eats virtue alive. This is why he would not give you motivation. He would give you commandments. Cold, decisive, governing principles designed to force alignment with power. Cut what doesn't pay. Focus on one money skill. Publish daily even when afraid. Move where money flows. Never negotiate from need. Build assets while you sleep. Dominate one micro-market. Create proof before promises. Use leverage, not labor. Leave the old identity behind. These are not moral ideals, they are strategic imperatives. Follow them and upward movement becomes inevitable. Ignore them and nothing changes. And then Machiavelli would end not with encouragement but with a reckoning. Because transformation does not begin when you feel ready. It begins when you confront what you've been protecting. If your income does not rise in the next 90 days, it will not be because the strategy failed. It will be because you defended a weakness that needed to die. A habit stronger than discipline, a fear stronger than ambition, an identity stronger than strategy. Machiavelli believed all progress requires sacrifice, not of comfort, but of self. Princes fall when they cling to who they were instead of becoming what the throne demands. If you want higher income, you must occupy a higher position. If you want a higher position, you must become capable of standing there, and that means shedding versions of yourself that no longer fit. So, here is the final blade line. If your income does not rise in 90 days, which version of you refused to die? Sit with that. Let it burn. Because most people do not fail from lack of ability. They fail from lack of courage to execute the obvious, to cut, to sharpen, to be seen, to ask for more, to build leverage, to move without apology. If this series gave you clarity, reflect honestly and leave a comment with one word that represents what you are ready to sacrifice. And if you want to keep operating at this level, subscribe and join a growing community of men who are done protecting chains and ready to build power, leverage, and income with Machiavellian clarity. 90 days from now, you will either be someone who executed ruthlessly or someone who defended the life that was quietly killing them. The world will not decide which man you become, only you will.